Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tormented Souls. Alright, so let me describe the premise of this game as worse as I can. Caroline Walker, job occupation super kawaii Canadian girl, gets a mysterious postcard which tells her to sneak into an abandoned hospital, so she enters, gets knocked out, wakes up, becomes a pirate, and now has to fight handicapped monsters with improvised and wacky weaponry like a nail gun. This ridiculous summary does not change the fact that the game is still one of the best thrills I had last year. Except for the time I accidentally scrambled the database of a Pfizer warehouse. Instead of steroids and antibiotics to treat sick bulls, they got Viagra instead. Wanna know a secret? That was no accident, software development is just plain boring. Nevertheless, Tormented Souls is an awesome horror game. Not because of the story, which is in equal parts weird but then also intriguing, and for some reason we also take a look into another dimension, and to top it all off, there's also a dash of
more like a big ball of wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
The story is nice, it is, but it's just hella weird. And there are just too many elements at once. I can't really describe it without spoiling anything, so you better play it yourself. Back on track. Tormented Souls is great because it activates my nostalgia center. It is clearly inspired by the early Resident Evils and Silent Hills. I am talking about fixed camera angles to direct your attention to where it should or shouldn't go. Puzzles that are actually wrinkling your brain for a change, and the never-ending anxiety of running out of ammo. These were elements used when survival horror hit the mainstream. And I know what you're thinking, and yes, the tank controls are here as well. But only if you insist on using them. For the non-masochists among us, there exists a way more fluent control scheme that lets you turn around and run instantly. And I gotta be honest, part of me is super stoked to see these mechanics again. But I would not be doing my job as a reviewer if I didn't put out some constructive criticism, so I will do just that. First, I want to talk about the presentation, because this little indie gem is drop-dead gorgeous. Usually I'm not the guy who goes after looks alone, but I don't shun them either. Especially not when I get presented with downright picturesque scenery like this. These spots of beauty, however, stand in contrast to the rest of the hospital where most of the action takes place. The building was seemingly abandoned quite a while ago, and it shows in the many details the devs put in here. Everything looks dusty, grimy, out of place. Sometimes I had the feeling that the structure I was walking on would give in and I would fall to my demise. There's also a bunch of really old tech lying around, one of which is a tape recorder which acts as a safe spot. All you need to do is find an empty tape before you can actually save your progress. This is just one of the many nods to the survival hits of old. Also, the electricity doesn't work until you go into the basement to turn the generator back on. So for many stretches of the game, your only light source will be a lighter. And in the dark is where the game truly shines, as it casts silhouettes on the walls and projects weird thoughts directly into your mind. Unless you come close and investigate, you will never know exactly what you saw out of the corner of your eye. Is it just a mannequin? Or is it more? Yes, jump scares are part of the game, but just like in a good meal, this element is not overused and doesn't overshadow the other delicious tastes of madness and fear. A great deal of the horror is dealt by either leaving you in the dark, quite literally, without giving you a clue what happens next, and in the form of the monsters which will chase you through the many rooms and hallways. This is all rounded off by some very intelligent sound design. I am happy to say that I got spooked quite a bit and my anxiety level was raised constantly, as it should be. Still, I noticed that Tormented Souls leans not so much into the psychological horror and more into the body horror. This is especially apparent when the questions about the original inhabitants of the hospital get answered, as they were into some serious shady business. From the start, you can see some of the results in the enemy design. Say hi to the wheelchair speedster, which is one of the enemies the player will encounter. It's not really his name, I just think he's ridiculous, that's all. And I say this because, despite seriously scary moments in the game, Tormented Souls is unintentionally comedic sometimes. For example, at the beginning of the game I saw something move behind me, and I was instantly reminded of that goofy walking granny from the Stephen King's It trailer. Maybe you were scared, but I just found the scene hilarious, because my brain always adds a certain sound effect to the scene. See? Not so scary anymore, is it? Also, you gotta keep in mind that this game was created by an indie studio. And I guess they had to make some budget cuts, which shows in the cutscenes and every time a character says something.
My child, you are pale. What happened to you?
A person in a wheelchair with knives in his hands was chasing me.
Oh, it's you. Don't you remember me? I'm the town priest. We met here in the chapel only a couple of days ago.
What? I'm sorry. I don't remember you. I certainly don't remember coming here before.
I see. Perhaps I'm mistaken. I'm old and get confused every now and again.
Father, are you okay?
Carolyn, my child, that thing has stolen my Bible.
Stay there, Father. Right now, it's vital that you keep calm.
Yes, you're right. I don't know how I'll be able to thank you for taking care of my arm, my child.
What are you talking about, Father? It wasn't me.
But I saw you. Oh, you are right. I'm getting confused.
Butchers would charge a fortune for the kind of supreme ham you can find in here. It is truly on the same level as the OG Resident Evil games.
Jill, here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
Now don't get me wrong, these blemishes don't detract from the fact that Tormented Souls is still scary. It's just that the divide between the obviously life-threatening situation and the presentation of the characters is just hella weird. Also, I take serious issue with how Caroline walks. Girl, you could be slaughtered in a minute. Either that is a serious fear response or she is secretly a sociopath and feels right at home. Gameplay-wise, Tormented Souls holds almost no surprises as it takes a lot of inspiration from the 90s and 2000s survival horror games and just tweaks the formula here and there. First off, inventory management. It is a one-to-one copy from the 90s Resident Evil games. The items the player finds are put in a roster where they can be inspected in a more detailed 3D view. The biggest difference is that in these old titles your inventory space was limited and frequent backtracks to safe chests were necessary to deposit and make room for more vital items you need right now to open a door, or you need more ammo so you left some spare bullets back there. Lucky for us, we don't need that. Caroline's jacket is a hyperspace arsenal and has room for everything. And even though backtracking is still a thing, it will not be because of an item we just don't have at hand. Instead, the game will present us with doors or puzzles that can only be unlocked or solved at a later point in time, when we finally found the missing piece in the other end of the hospital. Another element which has been copied from the olden titles is that the backstory is mainly told through the letters and diary entries the player can find all over the mansion. These were written by certain key figures like the head of the hospital, his wife, and even the janitor. And I'll admit, there is a certain charm in finding these entries and piecing together the big mystery of this hospital. But sometimes you have to go out of your way to even find these letters, which means that certain story beats are missable. And then when the next cutscene rolls around, you might be wondering what the fuck is going on. However, the notes a player needs to solve crucial puzzles are always highlighted in one way or the other, so the game can progress even if the player is not interested in the story at all. Speaking of puzzles, I just adore them. The brain teasers in here go above and beyond and will actually challenge you to listen, to read, to take care of your environment, and to think of a solution, which is sometimes obvious and sometimes extremely abstract. It is rare for me to need more than a few minutes on most so-called puzzles in horror games, as they usually are just another variant of
"We know what hole that goes into, right?" That's right, the square hole.
But these puzzles actually remind me of the good Silent Hill puzzles where you had to read a poem about birds and then play some tunes on a piano. Yes, I know how that sounds, and it's awesome. The puzzles in here require a certain level of cognitive prowess, and I seriously like these challenges. There is, however, a thing I am disappointed about, and that is the combat. As scary as the monsters are, there is really only one type of enemy in the whole game. Sure, there are different variants as well. Some monsters are in wheelchairs, while others couldn't even afford that, so they crawl towards you, or better yet, use their crutches to come after you because they're still hooked to a machine. But all of them are in fact brainless and act the same. They spot you, they try to get close and stab you. And it's possible to run away from each of them, or even run circles if you wish. That's not scary, and it's hardly a challenge. Oh, and to all of you other reviewers out there who wrote, "This game is too hard, the ammo is so limited, blah 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 blah." Here's how it's done. All you need to do is shoot till they fall down, change to the crowbar, walk up, and play a bit of whack-a-mole before they get back up. That way, you save tons of ammo, use your brain. And even if you get hit, which happened multiple times because it was just a bit too cheeky, there are still tons of healing items in the form of good old morphine. Numbs not just the physical pain, but also everything else. Wait a second, okay, now I know why she walks that way. Okay, so what I will partially agree on is that the combat was made artificially harder than it has to be because of the fixed camera angles. Granted, sometimes one of those bastards will stay right around the corner you can't look at until you pass it. But usually the shooting gallery makes itself hurt beforehand or is just out of reach so you can do a heel face turn on the spot. But if people insist on rushing around that particular corner repeatedly, then I would almost say it's their own fault. Almost. Fixed camera angles are an incredible tool to create the right type of atmosphere. With the right angle, you can set a scene and invoke specific feelings in your audience. There is a reason why some shots rotate when you walk down a corridor. It's to create tension and tell your brain that something is not quite right. A high-angle shot not only lets you take in your surroundings, but can also transfer a message of loneliness, danger, or both. On a side note, if you are interested in cinematography and how it works, then I advise you to watch the movies of Alfred Hitchcock. There is a reason why movies like Psycho are still held in high regard by screenwriters and filmmakers alike. And that's what Tormented Souls understands and uses to great effect. Using a fixed camera in your setting ensures that the story will be told the way you want it to be told. But herein lies the problem. A camera angle is scripted and static, while a fight, which is dependent on player input, is dynamic, and combining these two is a hard thing to do. So yes, in order to shock the player, there will be monsters around the corner or just out of focus. You either go for atmosphere or for action. Tormented Souls went for atmosphere, and I fully respect that. In conclusion, I think combat is not stressful, not even hard. To an old veteran like me, it's just a tad disappointing because I don't get new impulses and never have to adapt. There is, however, one thing that stands out. Some sections are filled with darkness, and they're also filled with monsters, which puts the player at a disadvantage. Lighting the room and shooting is not possible because only a single item can be equipped at any given time. The monsters do not care. They keep coming for you anyway, which is highly stress-inducing. It took me a while to figure out that most dark rooms contain candle holders, which can be ignited. And once I create a pocket of light, everything's well and dandy again. And so I made my way through the game, I had a blast, and I also witnessed a very special monster that will hunt you through the whole mansion in the last half of the game. And here I am kinda disappointed again because all you need to do to get rid of it is walk out of the room. That was all. And then you can come back in and the monster is gone. But it looks funny and it makes funny noises. So whenever I felt stressed, I relieved some of that stress with that monster. And now I think it's time for the verdict. Tormented Souls can be played by anybody who is into survival horror. New fans who never got into contact with the granddaddies of the genre will be surprised at how effective and cinematic horror can be, well, minus the cutscenes and voice acting. And veterans will feel right at home and might even appreciate the various improvements over the rusty old formula that started it all. With that being said, I only have one more thing to show you: the music. I will play you out with the title song, which is just one of the many great pieces you can actually hear in this game. It made me fall in love with it, and even if you don't want to play it, I highly recommend giving the soundtrack a go. So here it is, 1 minute of uninterrupted bliss. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.